We all seek enlightenment. We all seek a return to Alpha Omega. We all seek and crave pure expression, limitless joy, affirmation, ecstasy. It's why we all jack off to pornography and snort cocaine, to get these quick fixes and
We
adrenal.
don't all do that, just saying.
Well, no, I don't, you don't, we don't. Forgive me, I'm being a bit reductive. But the point is that most of humanity, it would seem to me, are variously led by addictions and appetites precisely because they're seeking to fulfill the void. And the void can only be filled with the I am, with the actualized relationship with self. And once that comes about, you don't take the knee to the local corrupt policeman or to the justice or to the anyone. And life changes course as well, because you start to become the determiner of the outcome. Because when we move into coherence with self and we stand beneath a central sun, a phenomenon occurs. And this Christed mantle activates. This is the master, the message of the master Jesus. Of all the great prophets have said the same thing. All great masters speak to the same unity consciousness phenomenon, that when we stand in pure truth within self, we activate coherence with the divine. The divine then marries the immanent templates of perfection, of the angelic, back to us, and we become now the sons and daughters of God who will and can and must define all outcomes in this world. And our foundational remit is to anchor heaven to this earth, to reveal the kingdom of heaven on earth. We first have to do that by recognizing the witchery and the bedevilment of the false light matrix that self-reveals, self-fulfills, and self-exists out there by virtue of our abdicating our sovereignty and our divinity. So we must now learn the craft of restitution, restoration, and bringing ourselves back to ourselves, unafraid of the consequence. The consequences already happened. The people who were foolish enough to roll sleeves up or abnegated their highest conscience or instinct sufficiently to have synthetic molecules pumped into their arm, no disrespect to people who did it, but I'm not retroactively speaking to the fact that many of us fell victim to the thrall of the devil when we were urged by this satanic construct called government and the Public Health Administration to roll our sleeves up and receive the mark of the beast. And it was the mark of the beast. That's not to say we can't absolve it and redeem it and transmute it. We can. We are Christed ones. We are the angelics. We have all the power of the universe at our disposal, but only once we rid ourselves of the false light. And we have to do it as acts of consciousness. So the new earth is the ground floor of that reconstitution of sovereign expression, where we say we're taking back title of the soil, we're removing the federal liens and all the invisible liens against the land that we think we own, because you don't own your house, you think you do. You don't own your car, you think you do. You don't own your children, you think you do. You don't own anything. You don't even own your own teeth. Everything is owned by the crown, by Cronus, by the state. You've contracted it. You were volunteered into it with the birth registration certification. You are owned lock, stock, and barrel by Washington District of Columbia, which passes you on through its clearinghouse, the U.S. Treasury Department, to Londinium, where the crown, Cronus, the crown of England, sorts you out and hurls your value back to the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. And somewhere in the cloisters of the Black Papacy in Rome, your soul is tethered and owned by a fiction, by the demon, by the demiurge. So be clear, it's a vast and seemingly complex story. Actually, it's devastatingly simple. It's about you in the now, prepared or not, to walk and conduct yourself in pure truth and right action.
A question. No, that's very good. A question. I got several actually.
Me too.
There are certain paths people can take to renounce these liens and ties, but if they don't get them all, what I've been finding out is they don't get them all the ducks in a row. They end up in jail. They miss one little piece of paper. They're screwed. Their kids are taken away. So,
That's right.
are you kind of in the how do you say it? In the school of thought that no, I don't need to do all those things right. I am who I am as of right now. Or do you
Yes,
really believe in getting the paperwork done and making
great
plastic?
question.
Yeah.
Great question, Jeff. And it's actually the perfect question for me because it's a twofold thing. On the one hand, if I move into my highest spiritualized expression, then I absolutely emanate the plasmoid field sufficiently to be able to alchemize reality. But on the other hand, so do I do all the paperwork? No. I am it's immensely more powerful than the paperwork. To some extent, doing the paperwork is you taking the knee.
I agree.
However, I will say this. I don't want to be the Pied Piper that leads people to purgatory or to a prison cell.
Right.
And I'm not out there saying to people, do this, you should do this, you should do that. I'm not doing this. I'm saying this is what I'm doing. This is what we're doing. And we're going to be proving that out. So if people want to take up the template, the blueprint, and move with it, delightful. But that's where we're headed. And I'm lucky that I've consolidated a very broad, very wide, and somewhat enlightened network and movement around the world. And I mean all around the world. So I know that we've got the inertia of the collective and in the gestalt to be able to alchemize an incredible, almost magic wand scenario, which will happen in the next 36 to 48 months. So by the year, we're now 2024. I'd say by midpoint 25, we will have instituted fully the micronation, so to speak. I'll go further than that because I know how to do it. My days political work and diplomatic work, and certainly within the belly of the United Nations at some point, I understand about multilateral treaties. I understand about these global compacts and about how I can personally sit down with a number of heads of state and invite them to treaty the recognition of the status of the new Earth nation. I could do that, probably take me 3 weeks and a few $1,000s flying around. So I know how to do that. And I know which leaders I can approach and which I can't. You have to have 3 nations in joining a treaty before you can be brought forth onto the floor of the General Assembly of the United Nations. And then once you're on the floor of the General Assembly of the UN, you can then speak to the world because they're all congregated there, all the world leaders. And you can say, hey, we've got this great idea. How do you all feel about it? Then they can vote yes or no. Then all of a sudden you're a thing on the international playing field. So there are ways and ways of getting your agenda brought forth before the world in the right way. But I intend to play that game moving forward, to be sure. But I don't want to do anything as an act of war. And that's the key piece here. Everything that we do must be an act of peace.
Isn't a declaration of independence an act of war to many organizations and countries?
Only to psychopathy, and if they're psychopaths, then pull out your $200 million guns in Middle America and shoot them dead.
But they may be that, though.
Well, of course they may be that. You might also get hit by an asteroid in the next 3 seconds. But
the reason is the United States declared independence to Great Britain, and they took that as a declaration of war.
Yeah.
And so, as an individual says, I declare myself sovereign of this nation or of this nation state, then they may take that as a declaration of war.
Jeff, those kind of hawks will doubtless be profoundly offended and affected by this, and be adversely so, and want to take some kind of action. They don't have the power to do so. They don't have their finger on a trigger, or even on a nuclear button for that matter, any longer. So Vladimir Putin has taken containment of that capacity, and the elements in China as well. There are big moves going on in the Babylonian basement that preclude Joseph gibbering sock puppet Biden or any of his troglodytes to be able to action anything against the sovereigns. There are over, I understand it, between 2.5 and 3 million state nationals now already in the United States. That means that 1% of America has already woken up and revoked, redacted, rescinded, and retracted their contracts, are not paying taxes, and are able to move freely unmolested. And if a policeman does stop you, that policeman, if he's a corrupt policeman, he's required to run your numbers on the central server. Once he sees that he has no containment and no jurisdiction over you, he has to walk away very quickly.
Right.
Now, I've seen that play out in real time. It happened on my last tour, where one of my crew died in the hotel room. And later that evening, we got back to the hotel to discover the police still standing outside his room. We'd been on stage. We got back to the hotel. The police were still at the hotel, standing outside his room. They hadn't even crossed the threshold. And we asked them why. We said, is there going to be an investigation? Are we in some kind of trouble because we were late in reporting the dead body? What? And they said, no, we have no jurisdiction over this man. We're waiting for you to inform you that you are his nearest and dearest now. You have to contact his family. You have to get a private coroner. You have to dispatch the body. We are not allowed to touch it. And he was the man on our tour who was teaching the sovereignty method and metric on the tour. So, I've seen real time how it plays out. I've also had that myself with police multiple times. I carry around a badge from the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, and I've spoken to police in multiple countries using that badge. And if you know how to conduct yourself, Jeff, you can more or less navigate anything. It's difficult if you're in Sudan or actually I was there recently and I didn't have problems, but you could be in some countries and get a bullet in the head and be found in the desert, to be sure. So one has to be very judicious the way you pretend at being a sovereign. One very dear friend of mine right here in Sedona last year had her leg broken by a policeman because she got stopped and out the window of the car tried to, claim her sovereignty in the wrong way and ended up being dragged out of the car and had a leg broken. So of course she can now sue the son of a bitch and should do, but you're right to be cautious about it.
I have a question. I've heard about this. It actually in Arizona, it's starting to gain steam for sure. How would one go about to make this proclamation, or what is the proper way of doing it in a legitimate way, not just saying, hey, or do you, just saying it? Is there any?
So, John, I don't want to give too much of my game away because I'm only making the announcement, the reveal at the end of my tour on the 18th of May. But I'll tell you this much. I would be very happy to assemble 3 talking heads, the highest in law and economics, and with you guys and me be there. And we could actually go into this for a proper session because it's a very, very important subject. It's one that's going to become, I think, the biggest subject on the planet in the next 24 to 36 months. Once people realize that there was always an escape route, there was always a get out of jail free card. We never needed to pay $1 in tax personally.
There's people I met in Arizona that are doing exactly that.
Yeah,
as you're saying, there's like some couple million now in the United States. So.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right. Exactly.
Oh, definitely. Put that together. I definitely want to hear more when you're ready for that. That's very interesting. Greg, you had a question a little while back. I want to make sure that you're.
Yeah, well, Sacha was talking about we are going to accomplish certain things by mid 2025. And so the things you're talking about, establishing sovereignty and things like that and not abolishing the IRS sound kind of, I've talked about the plan. You didn't mention those words. So is this something that's going to be happening like with this group of people, the military and so on? Or is this something is we mean just you and your group? I was a little curious to establish that.
Fine. That's a fine question. So no, I'm not representing some great nebulous cloud of military intelligence objectives. I'm simply representing my own microcosmic ecosystem, which is very connected in information relay between various intelligence, military intelligence, and economics and legal minds. But we're taking this forward because we know how to do it, and we know how to do it using the highest expressions of law and the highest jurisdictions. So, and we're doing it because it has to happen now, and because frankly, this eclipse of the 8th of April, 2024, was the starting gun. That was the starting gun.
Why is that?
Well, if you understand that this eclipse, total eclipse, traversed North America and passed directly over 7 towns called Salem. Called Nineveh.
Yes.
Then there's only 7 towns called Nineveh in America. And the last total eclipse in 2017 that passed over North America from Canada into the US passed over 7 towns known as Salem. And there's only 7 towns known as Salem.
Salem means peace.
Yeah, and
Come
the
home.
thing started off in a place called Little Egypt and ended in a place called Rapture. So this is stuff known to the ancients and to the, Masonic elements back in the day, hundreds of years ago. This dateline of the 8th of April 2024 was predicted 14,000 years ago and is in the Bible. I stated a month before it happened that it was the most important cosmic event in 5,000 years. I was corrected by Dr. Alex Ling, who said it's the most important event in 7,000 years. He flew in to Mexico. I met him in Torreon, out a three hours flight outside of Mexico City. Torreon is the town closest to a place called the Zone of Silence, the epicenter, the navel of the paramagnetic Earth, as it related to this total eclipse of the sun that just happened. And we wanted to be there directly under central sun at midday, when the eclipse was in its highest, which was 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 28.1 seconds, something like that. And we went there into the desert, off-road, with shaman and scientists, and we did ceremony there on that day. And the cloud bank was black the whole day. So people of Mexico in that part of the world said it's never happened in history. This is always completely clear clouds, not even nothing in the sky. And yet for 3 days leading up to the eclipse, geoengineering had fomented this cloud bank, which was impenetrable. So on the day, we're in the desert, in the zone of silence, NASA trucks everywhere, militarized stuff going on. These devils are doing their own stuff because the ionosphere is changing shape on that day at that time. As the sun was going into total eclipse, those devils knew that the electrons were being pulled further apart in a lattice work than ever before in 7,000 years, thinning the veil between worlds. So they were conducting their Sabbatean experimental shit, and we were there as a counterpoint to it with our feathered shaman in the desert, and we punched a hole through the cloud that was massive in a ceremony and remained for 5 hours, that hole. It was the only hole in the cloud cover, and we witnessed the full eclipse. Albeit we didn't look at it with our eyes, we were conducting a ceremony to go inward and touch the central sun and reinstall the software of the imagining. Rudolf Steiner put it best when he said that the sun puts out trillions and trillions of fibrils, tentacles, rays that come down and touch all living systems. And human beings are the highest form of expression in the temporal realm. Here we are on the surface of the earth, and our imaginings, our dreaming and our ideas, our thoughts, our imaginings are the most powerful and vital thing. And as we think or dream or imagine, these fibrils come, literally energetic tentacles come off our heads like rays and move up in toward the sun. And every ray of the sun has a counterpoint ray that comes off a human imaginarium. It's a beautiful thing. It's a symbiosis that creates a feedback loop. Humans drive reality. We drive the cosmos. Our dreaming and imagining manifests reality. Steiner knew that back in the day. So we also know that latter-day shaman and people who are connected to the powers and the mysteries of the earth and the guardians of the sky, we're connected to the elementals. We all know the same logic, and we simply key into it when we're not trying to buy Porsches and Lamborghinis and jack off in Monte Carlo, at the casino tables. We're not playing in the false light matrix, but getting real with ourselves and with our birthright. We learn this stuff. And there we were, and I witnessed it. Again, it's not the first or most magical thing I've witnessed. I've been with so many oracles and medicine men and shaman over the last 25 plus years. I've seen magical, mysterious things, but that was important on that day because it was the thinning of the veil.
And a question on that. Okay, go ahead and finish.
That was the starting gun.
Okay.
That was the starting gun. That's the point I'm trying to make. That 4 minutes, 28.1 seconds of total eclipse of the sun was the starting gun for the revelation and the rapture, and they're two sides of the same coin.
The question I have is do you believe that the people, I don't know who, ancient occultists or some sort, you were mentioning the Masons and that, when they organized the cities that they were lining it up for this event, the names, or do you think it's just the nature of, I don't know.
No, it was clearly,
I guess. Yeah.
No, it was clearly predictive and clearly prescriptive, and we know that it's a forensic evidence. The lines that crisscrossed on North America became the Alpha Omega symbol. And the Alpha Omega symbol written on the surface of North America was predicted in the biblical prophecies as being the signature of God. So when the signature of God is writ upon the Americas, that is when you will know the
That's
revelation.
the path of this eclipse and the path of the one 7 years ago made
Yes.
this shape. That's what you're talking
Yes,
about.
they both, and one's Nineveh, one's Salem. If you understand Nineveh, that's connected to Jonah being swallowed by the whale for 3 days and nights, and then being spat out, having to go to Nineveh to tell the people of Nineveh to atone. They had 40 days to atone, to repent, or else.
I'm of
And-
the understanding recently that Nineveh also had an eclipse similar to this just before Jonah appeared. And so
Yes.
they knew
Yes.
that there was some kind of an issue going on and that they needed to that there was going to be judgment. So
And
when
that
Jonah
is-
came, they just heard they were open to him. They wouldn't normally have been open to him, but
And
they
that is
were.
that's why I'm here doing this tour. I'm doing a 40 days of atonement tour, and kicked off in the zone of silence, Central Sun, and 40 days later is the 18th into the 19th of May, which is the culmination of my tour when I'm doing the reveal on the micronation. Yeah, and
All right.
until then, about
So-
atonement and
So you
repentance.
definitely believe it's a prophecy rather than planned. Is that that was kind of the best way I was
They're
going to
both
ask
the
you.
same thing, Jeff. You
Okay,
can't.
but the individuals, okay, but the individuals that named the city, do you think, my question is, did this, I'm wondering, did somebody plan for this event to happen other than
Yeah.
the spiritual realm?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
Yes, they did, and they still do to this day. So these you have these very enigmatic figures. I refer to them as the Babylonian priesthood. And to be fair, and to temper my language and my temper somewhat, I need to say that it's not good or bad. It's both good and bad. It's the checkerboard of the kingdom of the devil, in a sense. It's the black and white chessboard of the Masons. And it is understanding the realm of duality and how we navigate the dualistic realms in order to transmute and transcend into the elixir, the ambrosia, the diamond in the coal, which is what the Adamite is. We are the Adamite. We are the Adam, which is diamantine, which is the diamond born of the coal of the earth. So, it's both things. It was prophesied. Some of the people back in the day who were designing the layout of the streets and building roads of Salem and Nineveh, those towns, wouldn't have had the faintest idea. 99.9% of people would just follow orders. That's what humans are attuned to doing. We follow orders. That's our great folly. And when we stop following orders and start following the dictate of conscience and instinct, we'll start to reveal the kingdom of heaven on earth. But for thousands of years, certainly for many centuries, we have simply done what we've been told to do. So the short answer is a very, very select few, Jeffrey, would have known what they were designing back in the day. And it would have been undertaken by the worker ants.
Makes sense. Now the
Question about the
yeah. Well, really quick,
Go
I'll
ahead.
make one mention also on Nineveh. There's also, and Jordan Peterson unpacks this really interesting. Nineveh has really associated with having an obligation to say something, and if you don't, then that's when the real consequences come. Not only are you thrown over into the water, but you're also eaten by the whale, which equates to hell, and it just keeps getting worse and worse when you are asked and required to say something true and you don't do it. And we're kind of in that world right now, don't you think?
Beautifully stated. Couldn't have put it better myself. And yes, and that's where the exigency exists. That's where the urgency exists, in that sense of pure truth and right action. And it becomes our greatest protection as well. That's the crushing irony. People are so mind-fucked and cult programmed into thinking, especially in middle America, to think that, oh, we step out of the box, we're going to get bushwhacked. Yeah, that's been true hitherto. Now step out the box and really put yourself on the line, and you activate your Christed mantle. That becomes your protection. That becomes your cloak as you walk as Daniel through the lion's den. It becomes your protection as you navigate the shadow in the valley of death.
Hey, if you like these kind of conversations and you'd like to see more, click like and subscribe to our channel. And if you're at the computer and you'd like to hear the whole podcast, click right here.